she's not lonely. She's not lost. She's just somewhere else. If you've ever caught yourself talking out loud to an empty room, if you've ever stared at a messy desk and felt a flicker of shame you couldn't quite explain, if you've ever gone quiet in a group of people who were laughing because the joke wasn't actually funny to you, this video is not going to comfort you the way you expect. Because by the time we reach habit number 10, you're going to realize something. The things you were taught to hide were never flaws. They were signals, and almost no one around you was ever taught to read them. So stay until the end, because the last habit is the one that reframes all 9 before it. It happens in the kitchen, in the car, in an empty hallway at work. A sentence slips out loud, half a thought chasing itself in circles, and then she catches herself, freezes, glances around to see if anyone heard. Because somewhere along the way, she learned that composed women don't do this. Composed women keep their thoughts locked neatly behind their teeth. So when it slips out, it doesn't feel like thinking. It feels like exposure. But there's a reason this keeps happening, and it isn't a glitch. It's a mechanism a psychologist once mapped out almost a century ago. A mechanism that only activates in minds working faster than their mouths can keep up with. Psychologist Lev Vygotsky called it inner speech, the bridge between raw, tangled thought and organized language. For most people, that bridge stays silent, internal. But for a mind juggling too many variables at once, the pressure sometimes forces that bridge outward, into sound. Talking to herself isn't losing control. It's her brain doing the one thing that actually restores it. Everyone else is asleep. The group chat has gone silent hours ago, and she's still there, wide awake at 1 a.m., then 2, then 3, while the rest of the world quietly accuses her, tomorrow, of having no discipline. Because women especially are handed a script. Rise early, glow, conquer the day before the sun's even up. Anything else reads as laziness, as poor habits, as something to apologize for over coffee. Except researchers have found something that flips this entire story. Something about why certain minds come alive exactly when the world goes quiet. Multiple studies on circadian rhythm and cognitive ability have found a real correlation between higher cognitive performance and later natural sleep cycles. It's not undiscipline. It's that the night is the only window where the noise stops. No roles to perform, no demands to answer, no eyes watching. For a mind like this, midnight isn't exhaustion. It's the only room left with no one else in it. Guests glance at the desk and don't say anything, but the look says it for them. Piles of paper, 3 unfinished projects, a system that looks, to anyone else, like no system at all. Because girls are taught early that tidiness is virtue. That mess equals moral failure. So every glance at that desk carries a quiet accusation she never asked for. But watch what just happened when she reached into that chaos without hesitation. Underneath that visible mess is something researchers actually went looking for and found. A study out of the University of Minnesota found that disordered environments actually stimulate more creative, less conventional thinking than tidy ones. What looks like clutter on the surface is often a full mental map underneath. She's not organizing the desk. She already organized her mind, and the desk simply stopped being worth the effort. She turns down the brunch. Again. And somewhere in the group chat, someone types the word distant, maybe cold. Because women are expected to be endlessly warm, endlessly available, present at every gathering, radiating ease at every small talk exchange. Choosing silence over socializing isn't supposed to be allowed. But there's a reason a crowded room can feel less like connection and more like static. And it goes back to how her brain is wired at rest, long before she ever walks into that room. Psychologist Hans Eysenck's cortical arousal theory found that highly intelligent minds often run at a higher baseline of internal stimulation. They don't need external noise to feel activated. They already have it. Small talk isn't relaxing to a mind like this. It's overstimulating. Solitude isn't rejection. It's the only setting where the volume finally matches what's already happening inside. Keys missing again. A text left unanswered for 3 days. Standing in a doorway with absolutely no memory of what she walked in for. And the label shows up fast. Flaky. Absent-minded. Someone who can't keep track of the basics. While somehow keeping track of everything that actually matters, that contrast isn't random. It's not a memory problem at all. It's a filtering system, and it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Cognitive load theory tells us that working memory is finite. A limited amount of mental bandwidth available at any moment. A mind carrying complex, high-value problems will automatically triage. It purges the trivial to protect space for what matters. Losing her keys isn't a malfunction. It's her brain silently protecting its most valuable resource. Why? Again and again. Not to be difficult, but because the answer, "that's just how it's done," has never once satisfied her. And that's when the label appears. Difficult. Argumentative. Too much. A woman who questions authority is rarely called curious. She's called a problem. But underneath that discomfort she causes in the room is something much simpler than defiance. It's a filter she can't switch off, and it exists for a reason. This is analytical skepticism, an internal system that refuses to absorb a belief or a rule simply because it's familiar. It's not rebellion for its own sake. It's a mind that treats every assumption as something to be earned, not inherited. The joke lands, but only for her. Everyone else just blinks. And for a second, she wonders if something is wrong with her sense of timing. Nothing kills a joke faster than having to explain it. And nothing feels more isolating than being the only one who saw the layers underneath it. But that gap between what she said and what they heard isn't a failure of delivery. It's a difference in processing. Processing sarcasm, irony, and layered humor requires holding multiple, sometimes contradictory meanings in mind at once. Research in cognitive linguistics links this comfort with ambiguity directly to higher cognitive flexibility. The joke that fell flat wasn't too clever for the room by accident. It required a kind of mental agility most minds simply aren't exercising in that moment. It was one sentence, sent 3 days ago, and she's still turning it over. The tone, the punctuation, the possible meanings behind a period instead of an exclamation point. And that's usually where the conversation ends, labeled sensitive, fragile, told to just let it go, as if letting go were a switch she simply forgot to flip. But what looks like spiraling from the outside is actually a full, deliberate audit happening on the inside. Daniel Kahneman's dual process theory describes System 2. Slow, deliberate, effortful thinking, as opposed to fast, instinctive System 1 reactions. Analytical minds default here far more often. And when that tendency meets the social hypervigilance many women develop just to navigate double standards, the result is a mind auditing every angle, exhausting, but almost never wrong. The deadline is close. The idea is already fully formed in her head, and still, nothing. Just a blinking cursor and a rising sense of panic she can't quite explain. Lazy, she tells herself, before anyone else even gets the chance to. Unmotivated. A familiar, private insult she's used on herself more times than she can count. But that freeze was never about laziness. It was never about a lack of drive. It was about a gap, a very specific, very heavy gap between two things. The paralysis comes from the distance between the vision, the flawless version she can already see clearly in her mind, and the first imperfect step of actually starting. That gap is what freezes her. And it's the exact same mechanism that produces work of unusually high quality the moment she finally crosses it. Someone says her name. Twice. She blinks back into the room, a half second too late, and offers an apologetic smile that doesn't quite explain where she just was. Distracted. Checked out. Rude, even, in a world that expects total presence, total attention, at all times from everyone at the table. But she wasn't gone. Not really. She was somewhere far more active than anyone at that table could see. The default mode network activates when the brain disengages from the outside world. And in highly active minds, this network doesn't go quiet. It gets louder, simulating futures, drawing distant connections, quietly solving problems no one even knew she was working on. That moment of checking out was never absence. It was her mind, working exactly as it was built to. 10 habits. 10 moments she was taught to shrink from. And underneath every single one, not a flaw, a frequency. A mind running at a resolution most of the world was never built to read. So if you saw yourself somewhere in this video, in the pacing, the mess, the midnight thoughts, the joke nobody laughed at, hear this clearly. You were never too much. You were never broken. You were simply operating on a different frequency the whole time. And now you know exactly why.